السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده تعالى ونستعين به ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو حي لا يموت وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وكشف الله به الغمة فجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وارض اللهم عن سادتنا أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وعن تابعيهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار وما قل وكفى خير مما كثر وألهى وإنما توعدون لآت وما أنتم بمعجزين اللهم إني أعوذ بك أن أقول زورا أو أغشى فجورا أو أقول قولا بغير علم أو أكون بك ربي مغرورا عباد أوصيكم وأوصي نفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما ثم أما بعد. In these blessed days, the days that we've just come out of, the days of Dhul Hijjah, you've probably heard a lot about Ibrahim alayhi salam and the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam and the countless sacrifice that Ibrahim alayhi salam made throughout his life. And we see that over and over, he was asked to sacrifice from a very young age, and every single time he came through. Every single time he proved his obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, we know this about Ibrahim alayhi salam. We know the details of the different stories where he's asked, or he's rather threatened by his community when he calls them to Allah and they throw him in a fire, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects him, speaks to the fire and tells the fire to be cool upon Ibrahim alayhi salam. Then we know later on in his life, he's asked to leave his wife and child in a barren desert where there's nothing there. And he's asked to do this, why? As a commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he obeys. Then we see later on in his life, this child that he's left there, when he's grown up, Ibrahim alayhi salam is asked to sacrifice his child. And again, Ibrahim alayhi salam fulfills every single commandment. Now, a lot of times when we hear these different displays of obedience by Ibrahim alayhi salam, we might look at it and be confused, or we might look at it and not fully get it. You might think, how is that possible? Or you might think, oh, he's a prophet of Allah. Of course he can do that, I can't do that. No, the prophets were human beings just like you and I. However, they were chosen and they were special because of certain qualities that they had. And those are the things that we're trying to benefit from. We want to try to bring those qualities into our life so that when we're tested, when we're asked to sacrifice, when inevitably we will be tested in this life, that hopefully we can respond in a prophetic way, that we can also respond with obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, in many places in the Quran, we see different dialogues of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And when you look at a conversation, when you get to see how someone speaks, what different things they highlight, how they speak about certain things, you get to gain a lot of insight about someone. In one instance, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he is inviting people to worship Allah. And when he gets to the point of introducing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and telling people about Allah, he goes on to say, الَّذِي خَلَقَنِي فَهُوَ يَهْدِينِ. He says, my Lord is the one who created me and then guided me. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't just create us and leave us be. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired in the hearts of mankind and human beings to take care of one another. Different mechanisms in place. This thought and this concern. Different ways to sustain yourself. This survival instinct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that in place. Allah taught us how to survive, how to live. He gave us that guidance. وَالَّذِي هُوَ يُطْعِمُنِي وَيَسْقِينِ. However, don't be confused. Just because you're able to do things, just because you can go to work and earn some money, just because you can go to the grocery store and buy some things, don't think that you earned everything of your own accord. He is very clear. He says, my Lord is the one who gives me food, and my Lord is the one who gives me drink. Even though when you and I eat and when you and I drink, we sometimes forget that. Why? Because you're like, why do I have this meal in front of me? Because I prepared it. Well, how did you get the ingredients? I went to the store. Well, then where did those come from? They came from somewhere. But if you take everything back to its origin, everything came from Allah. And the other reality is, any ability and capacity that you and I have, whatever strength you have, whatever you're able to do, you're able to do it because of the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you have any doubt about this, just look around you in the world. When you see people that don't have the same skills and ability as you, what goes through your mind? Is the first thought that, man, that's unfortunate for them? Or is it an expression of gratitude? Oh Allah, thank you so much for favoring me and blessing me, oh Allah. And immediately it reminds us and connects us back to Allah. So he says, الَّذِي هُوَ يُطْعِمُنِي وَيَسْقِينِ. He's the one who gives me food and he's the one who gives me drink. Because without his will, without his permission, I wouldn't have anything, no matter how hard I worked, no matter how much effort I put forth. If Allah didn't decree this for me, if Allah didn't write this for me, I would never have it. It is all a blessing from Allah. وَإِذَا مَرِضْتُ فَهُوَ يَشْفِينِ. Then he goes on to say, and when I become sick, when I fall ill, he is the one who cures me. He is the one who provides me with shifa, with cure. And this is a beautiful expression of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's very important to pay attention to the tone. So far, everything that he said, whenever he's talked about Allah, he said he is the one who does this and he is the one who does that. He's attributed everything to Allah. He says, Allah created me, Allah guided me, Allah gives me food, Allah gives me drink. Even though if someone said, I earn food and drink, it's not that bad of a statement. You wouldn't like go up in arms and say, yeah, of course you worked hard and Eventually, if you say Allah gave it to you, that's great. But no, he says, Allah gave me food, Allah gave me drink. But when it comes to something that can be perceived as negative, like something like sickness, difficulty, he says, when I become sick. He doesn't say when he tests me with sickness, even though that would have been a true statement. We understand that as a reality, that any difficulty, any trial, tribulation that we go through, any sickness that we experience, it is with Allah's permission. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote that test for us. And it is a test for us to see how we're going to respond, how will we react. But even here, just look at his expression. Ibrahim alayhi salam is so careful with his words that when it's something that the person listening might perceive as negative, someone who doesn't have the insight that he does, he adjusts his words just a little bit. He says, when I become sick. Because if he said, when he makes me sick, the other person may not understand that. He may think, oh man, that's oppressive, that's wrong. So he says, when I become sick, he's the one that cures me. Look at that care and concern in his words. The way he talks about Allah, the way he thinks about Allah. When you think about that and internalize it, everything that comes after makes a lot of sense. When Ibrahim alayhi salam is asked to do these very difficult things, he's tested with the most tremendous test. And he passes them every single time with flying colors. It makes sense because you see the connection he has with Allah. You see how he talks about his Lord. And then he says, وَالَّذِي يُمِيتُنِي ثُمَّ يُحْيِينِ. And he's the one who will cause me to die, and he's the one who will give me life once again. Again, reiterating the reality of this life. None of us, no one who exists on this earth can deny the reality of death. It is a truth that whether someone believes or doesn't believe, everyone understands that reality. It is a reality that no one denies. In the Quran, this reality sometimes is referred to as yaqeen, the thing that everyone has conviction in. No one ever denies this thing. People try to run away from it. They try to ignore it, but no one denies it. Everyone understands that it's going to happen. But we as believers, we understand that there will be a life after this. And he says, وَالَّذِي يُمِيتُنِي ثُمَّ يُحْيِينِ. He is the one who will cause me to die, and then he will give me life once again. وَالَّذِي أَطْمَعُ أَن يَغْفِرَ لِي خَطِيئَتِي يَوْمَ الدِّينِ. And now look at his perception of the hereafter. Again, think about how you perceive the hereafter. What is the first thought that goes through your mind? Is the first thing you think of punishment and difficulty, again, which are all realities of the Day of Judgment. But look at how hopeful he is regarding Allah. He says, he is the one who will cause me to die. He will give me life again. And I am hopeful. I have hope in my Lord that he will forgive me on the Day of Judgment. Look at that hope. That's the hope that we need. A lot of times when we read the verses of the Day of Judgment, we see verses of punishment. Immediately, we become negative or we become disheartened. But we see how we're supposed to respond to these things. Yes, there are difficulties on that day. Yes, there will be punishment on that day. However, a believer who has a strong connection with Allah, who has a proper understanding of who Allah is, understands Allah's mercy, understands Allah's love, understands that Allah has provided for you your whole life. Allah has taken care of you your whole life. And if you respond to Allah's call and you try to cultivate that relationship, you don't abandon it, and you have some care and concern for the rights and responsibilities of your Creator, then you should be hopeful. You shouldn't be worried. You shouldn't be scared. If you're doing your best, then you should be hopeful that on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you. And then he says, رَبِّ هَبْ لِي حُكْمًا وَأَلْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. And then he says, oh my Lord, he says, grant me judgment. Grant me the ability to judge and decree. وَالْحِقْنِي بِالصَّالِحِينَ. And join me with the righteous ones. Keep me in good company, O Allah. وَاجْعَلْ لِي لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ. And he says, and give me a good mention in later generations. The fact that you and I are talking about him, the fact that every major religion ties back to Ibrahim alayhi salam, is an answer to this dua. That Ibrahim alayhi salam's name has been elevated, he has been honored. وَجَعَلْنِي مِنْ وَرَثَةِ جَنَّةِ النَّعِيمِ. And then he says, make me amongst those who will inherit the gardens of bliss, who will be in paradise. وَاغْفِرْ لِأَبِي إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الضَّالِينَ. And then he asked for forgiveness for his father. وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. Oh Allah, don't humiliate me on the day of judgment. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ. The day when no money or no children will benefit anyone. Every single one of us is going to be accountable for our own actions. Every single one of us is going to be accountable for our own actions. We won't be able to blame anyone else. Every single person, your wealth and your children, they can't help you on that day. We have to stand alone. إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. But then he gives us the exception. He says, except those who come on the day of judgment, who will come to Allah on the day of judgment with a sound and pure heart. And we see that this is the thing that we're trying to cultivate. This is the ultimate objective. We're trying to cultivate a sound heart, a heart that is connected to Allah, a heart that has a clear understanding of who Allah is. The scholars mention, what is a sound heart? How do we define qalbin salim, a sound or pure heart? And if you look throughout different mentions, every scholar has some slightly different variation of what it means to have a sound heart. But if you put all of their statements together, they mention a few things. The first one, a sound heart is a heart salima min shahwatin la turdillah. A sound heart is a heart that is free from any desires that are not pleasing to Allah. It is free from any intentions, any actions that will be displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a heart that strives to please Allah. Now again, the question is, this isn't an automatic. This isn't just a switch you turn on. It takes work. This is effort that you have to put forth. That when your heart is not doing the right thing, when it's not aligned properly, and it needs to be recalibrated, that you do that. You're always checking your heart. You're checking your intentions. You're checking your objectives and your priorities. That you're trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always. The second thing the scholars mention, سَلِمَ مِن تَصْدِيقِ خَبْرٍ يَتَنَاقَضُ مَعَ وَحْيِ اللَّهِ. It is free from accepting and confirming information that contradicts the revelation of Allah. What does that mean? That means, what is the ultimate truth for you? Do you take the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the revelation of Allah, do you truly take it as doctrine? Is it something that you truly run your life based off of? Is it the lens with which you view the world? Or does other information, does other news, does some other source always come above revelation? Always come above the word of Allah and His Messenger? A pure heart is the one that understands revelation is the most important thing. It is guidance from Allah. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created us, giving us the solution on how to navigate this life. Then they mention سَلِمَ مِن تَحْكِيمِ غَيْرِ شَرْعِ اللَّهِ. That it is a heart that is free from following or ruling other than the commandment of Allah. It focuses on the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the law of Allah. It prioritizes that. It's concerned with implementing that in its life. And lastly, they say, سَلِمَ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ. It is free from worshiping anyone besides Allah. It prioritizes Allah above anything else. It doesn't associate partners with Allah. That is a pure and sound heart. And if you were to summarize this, the first point summarizes it all. It strives to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it strives to stay away from anything that might be displeasing to Allah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي آمين. We see that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he has a certain understanding of who Allah is. And it is this understanding that once we try to bring it into our life, obedience becomes a lot easier. Then all the tests that he overcame, they make sense. Why? Because he has a clear understanding of his Lord. He has that pure heart, that qalbin salim, that we're all striving for. That if we come on the day of judgment with a pure heart, that's the most important thing. Nothing else is going to matter. And the inheritor of the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam is our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was commanded in the Quran to say this statement, this expression, this affirmation. قُلْ إِنَّنِي هَدَانِي رَبِّي إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ دِينًا قِيَمًا مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam has been commanded to say, my Lord has guided me to the straight path, an upright religion, the faith of Ibrahim alayhi salam, a man of pure faith who did not associate partners with Allah. قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And he's instructed to say, my prayers and my sacrifice, my life and my death, they're all for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. This summarizes our objective. This summarizes our purpose of creation, our entire existence, the work that we put forth, our prayer, everything needs to be for Allah. We have to prioritize Allah above everything. لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين. The Prophet ﷺ is commanded to say he has no partners. There is no one that can be put at his level. And this is what I have been commanded, and I'm the first one to devote myself to him. And we see that the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ is permanently tied to Ibrahim ﷺ. Every single time you want to send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, you are also always sending salawat on Ibrahim ﷺ. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallayta ala Ibrahim. Oh Allah, send salutations on the Prophet ﷺ just as you send salutations upon Ibrahim ﷺ. They're tied together. And we see throughout their example, their understanding of their Creator. We see their level of obedience and conviction. And that's what we're striving for. Now, what can we do to try to incorporate this into our lives? And really, first and foremost, the simplest thing is we have to prioritize Allah above everything else. Now, what does that mean? When we're making a decision, when you have to do something, before you consider everyone else, before you consider what might that person say, or what will my uncle say, or what will this person say, think about what will Allah say. I'm going to be held to account for every single decision that I make. I need to make sure that my decisions align with the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and obedience to Allah, and I try to stay away from disobedience to Allah. That's our ultimate objective. And every single time we mess up, because inevitably we will, our Creator has given us a route to come back, that we seek forgiveness and we come back to Allah. Make the right choice. That's inevitable. When you do that, turn back to Allah. Seek forgiveness from Allah and reset. And prove your love to Allah through action and sacrifice, and make lots of dua to Allah. Make dua to Allah constantly. And don't think of dua as this thing that can only happen in a specific place at a specific time. Yes, we've been taught times where your dua is accepted. We've been taught about these special times to make dua. Keep doing that. But also don't limit dua to that. If you're ever anywhere, you're in your car, you need anything, whatever it is, you're feeling stress, you're feeling difficulty, make dua to Allah in that moment. Why? Because it reaffirms your connection with Allah. It gives us that prophetic quality, that quality of Ibrahim alayhi salam, where he knows that Allah is the only one to rely upon. And if you cultivate that relationship, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in so many different places in the Quran and Hadith Qudsi, whatever small step you take towards Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will facilitate for you and come running to you. But we have to take the first step. It's as simple as that. Shaitan convinces us to not do anything. Shaitan convinces us to not do anything. Inaction is his plan. But if you take any action towards Allah, and you have a sincere effort and a sincere intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept, and you should have hope in that. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to benefit from His message. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to incorporate the example of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to be resurrected on the Day of Judgment from the ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا وجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا وجعلنا سببا لمن اهتدى اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا رب ارحمهما كما ربونا صغارا رب ارحمهما كما ربونا صغارا رب ارحمهما كما ربونا صغارا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون أقيموا الصلاة